You are now listening to the Going North podcast with your host, author and speaker, Dom Brightman. And every Monday and Thursday, you're going to hear the voice of a different author share their stories, expertise, and their struggles that they had to overcome in life to leave you inspired to get more out of your life. Be sure to not only listen to this episode, but share with others, connect with the authors, and always advance others to advance yourself. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we bring you some extraordinary humans overcoming really tall, very huge odds to becoming a more extraordinary being. Today's no different because our guest today has experienced some of the most extreme moments life can offer. 15 years ago, he was an inmate struggling with life in solitary confinement, placed there as a result of his actions while homeless and addicted to drugs. And while in prison, he reconciled his life and developed a personal philosophy. Once released, he found his wonderful wife and created an amazing family, a beautifully prosperous life, and became inspired to share his knowledge with the world. Let's give a super special, awesome, warm welcome to the wonderful James Purpura. How are you today, sir?
And Dominic, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. Always awesome.
Yes, indeed, man. That double A, baby. Always awesome indeed.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My man, overcoming drug addiction to now being an author and a married man with a wonderful family, changing the world, man. So how's it feel?
You know, I think I'm going to Disney World. After you put it that way, I'm actually going to Disneyland next week, so I'll just count that. So, you know, it feels good. It's been a really interesting journey. I say this at the end of the movie. Sometimes, you know, people look at me and they look at my journey and they go, you know, was it hard? And I always look at them back and I go, well, hell yeah, it's hard, but that's the wrong question. They said, what do you mean? I'm like, that is the wrong question. And they're like, well, what's the right question? I said, ask me if it's worth it. Right. And so, because I think we get so focused as human beings on avoiding hard things, you know, and I think that overcoming hard things is, you know, becoming resilient, you know, understanding the trials and tribulations life presents, and running into those full speed is what life is all about.
There you go, man. There you go, indeed. And it's really powerful right there that you actually mentioned that. It's like, that's the wrong question. He's like, was it hard? Like,
Hell yeah, it was hard. I mean,
yeah, man, probably harder than freaking 5 boulders at once.
well, I think, yeah, I mean, you know, I liken it to climbing up a mountain, you know, with a rope over my shoulder, dragging everybody I know and all of my issues and everything behind me, except they're not walking, they're dragging their feet. But when we talk about questions, right, a big part of what we do is we help people ask better questions. And one of the biggest problems I see out in the world today, Dominic, is that people are asking the wrong questions. And it makes sense why they're doing it, right? And so, you know, if you're in pain, you know, and I come over, you know, we're playing basketball or something, and I stomp on your foot by accident and I break your toe, the only thing you're thinking about is your pain, and rightfully so. And so you are looking for people, in this case, a doctor, to help you get out of pain. And emotional pain is the same way, right? And so it's when you're in pain, you know, when you're caught in a victim mentality, all of your focus is on you and your pain, right? And I heard this quote last week that 70% of millennials want to be famous. And somebody said to me, that's all? right? I'm like, I'm like, which is kind of disturbing to me, right? And so the reason I say that is because what is the wrong question people are asking? And the wrong question is this: what can you do for me? Right? Because that's not the right question. Success, happiness, right? Any level of well being was only ever based in service. So the right question is, what can I do for you? Right? And to become somebody rich, you have to help other people achieve their goals. Right? And so we have an entire society that's bought a vision of what life is supposed to be based on materiality and different things like that. But they're all running around going, hey, what can you do for me, Dominic? What can you do for me? What can you do for me? And they're never going to get to that top of that mountain we talked about because they're asking the wrong question. Your way out of emotional pain is to help somebody else. The fastest way to stop thinking about yourself is to help another, right? And success was only ever about service. Leadership was only ever about service. I live here in Utah. There was a senator who was running a campaign, and he was like, I'm ready to lead on his commercial. I'm like,
ooh, buddy.
I will never vote for you. I don't want a leader. I want somebody who says I'm ready to serve, right? Because that's what we as human beings are designed to do, is to serve.
Amen to that, because it's like, yeah, the greatest leaders are those who served first and serve others.
Right. I mean, that's what it's about. And our movie's all about, our book, our movie's all about perception. How do you shape and change your perception to shape and change your world? But one of the things we found on this journey is that we've been made to choose as a society between happiness and well-being and money and external success. And so, here's a pretty interesting story. So I remember when we were climbing the ladder and Steph and I got our first $1 million. And after a while, I looked at her and I said, are you happy? She goes, no, I'm not happy. I said, me either. Right. And so if you'd have told me before that point that money didn't create happiness, I'd have told you were a liar. Right. You're not creative enough. And even though we've all heard that entire lives, I just thought that was a lie rich people told poor people to make them feel better about being poor. Right. And so what's interesting about that, there is a statistic that actually supports that idea. And this might shock you, is that they did a 10-year study on suicide. And the only common denominator between people who kill themselves and people who don't, or they kill themselves, the only common denominator, the only thread they could find is that people with money and affluence kill themselves more often than people who are poor. And I thought about that for a long time. And here's the assessment I came to based on that is rich people no longer live with the illusion that money's going to make you happy. And so at that point, Steph and I turned inward and decided, well, we got to figure out what creates happiness. And so what we discovered is although what it takes to create money and success and those things is not the same thing that it takes to create happiness, they're two different sides to the same coin that we call perception. So creating money is about shaping and changing your perception of the outside world. Creating happiness is about changing and shaping the perception of your inside world. And you can actually, the most effective way to do it is to do it at the same time. But, we made every mistake in the book. We had to go backwards, right? Just, until we could figure out how to kind of reverse engineer our experience and figure out how to create both.
There you go. There you go, indeed.
Are we getting too deep, Dominic?
Not really. But it's so powerful because it's like, and that's really powerful right there. It's like, Steph, you've reached your first million. It's like, oh, well, I guess they weren't lying about the whole money not creating happiness sort of thing.
Right. There's a chapter in our book. It's called Money, 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 you know, and, after the song. And the first line is like, I could tell you all day long that money doesn't create happiness, but you're never going to believe me. But if I gave you $1 million, it would take you about a month. And then you go, you know what? I don't feel any different. Now, somebody did ask me, and they said, what's the advantage of having a lot of money, James? I said, better food.
True.
I mean, nicer house. I mean, really, it comes down to the quality of the food I eat, right?
Yeah, it's true, because you just get more quality out of life, and it's just that really is what it kind of is, what it just gives you that ticket to do.
Right. I think we started at the end, so let's go back to the beginning. So here's kind of what our book and our movie is about. It's called Perception, Seeing is Not Believing. And, what we show in both the book and the movies, we tell dramatic stories, and these stories are our stories. And we show how everybody is on a path to somewhere, right? And that without interruption, that you're going to end up wherever that path is taking you. And I think that most people believe in the act of God type of change, right? When in fact, change has to come from within, because whatever you feel on the inside reflects on the outside. And so I don't have to guess what you believe about your life, right? Because all I have to do is look at the evidence. Well, what you believe about yourself and the world. All I have to do is look at the evidence. I can look at somebody's weight and tell you what they believe about fitness. I can tell you look at somebody's health and tell you what they believe in that area. I can look at how much money they have in their bank account or don't have, and I can tell you what they believe about money. And so I think one of the illusions that people are doing is they're running around trying to change at the level of effect, right? They're trying to change circumstances on the outside, but the outside is only a reflection of the inside. And we explain this in great detail in the book and the movie so that people can adopt an understanding of how perceptions and emotions work so that they can shape and change their lives rapidly, because they're learning from all our mistakes. But because every time I heard that, type of terminology, before that, I was like, get the hell out of here, right? And it's because I didn't understand the underlying principle of perception, which is you don't see reality, right? And people go, what do you mean? And some people know that they don't see reality, but they don't really believe it, right? Because it feels so real. And it's like, well, if I don't see reality, what do I see? You see an assumption. Assumption of what? Of what you believe reality to be based on what it was in the past. And so in order to see something differently, that's why seeing is not believing. It's in fact, believing is seeing, right? Because the way our minds work, if you could jump into your subconscious mind for a second, it would be a completely mind-blowing experience, because you realize that your mind takes in millions of bits of information a second. It sees everything, right? Well, your conscious mind can't process that much information. So your perception's job is to take all that information and compress it down to the few bits that are the most interesting for you, right? And so your mind is constantly doing this filtering process and delivering you the things that are interesting. And so here's the underlying principle. You don't see reality, you see your interpretation of reality. The reason believing is not seeing is because if you don't believe something, you won't see it. That doesn't make sense to a lot of people, so I'll explain it in a little easier way. I'm going to ask you a question, Dominic.
Sure.
Could you have the thing that you want most in the world right in front of your face and just not see it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. But, I think people go, yeah, probably that could happen, but they don't realize how often it happens. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an easy example. I'll give your viewers an easy example. Do you remember the last car you bought? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so, I don't know if you decided you wanted that car before you showed up at the lot, or if you decided, when you got to the lot. But as soon as you started focusing on that model car, how many of those cars did you see in your town?
Probably see at least 3 a day.
You're like, what the hell? Everybody's got this car, right? Now, the question is, did you see that before? And the answer is no. because your mind didn't have a reason to retain that information. Those cars were always there, right? Your mind just didn't prioritize that piece of information. And so that's how your mind works. And so here's a story that we tell. I want you to imagine a man, he wants more than anything to be loved, to be in a relationship, except he's got really low self-esteem, really poor self-image of self. One day he walks into a store, he walks up to the counter, the girl behind the counter starts flirting with him. My question for you, Dominic, is does he see it?
I doubt it.
I doubt it. And everybody says that same thing, probably not. And the question, so when we answer that question in that way, we actually already understand how perception works. But the fact is, he's in a store, and the fact is the girl is in fact flirting with him, and he doesn't recognize it. So the thing that he wants most in the world is right in front of his face, and he doesn't recognize it. Why doesn't he recognize it? Because I said he had low self-esteem. So a belief of low self-esteem is impacting what he does or doesn't see on the outside, and that's literally how perception works. And so that's why I'll believe it when I see it isn't true. It's you'll see it when you believe it. Because if he believed he was worthy of love, he'd have seen that girl flirting with him. And we've all been in this situation where like your friend goes up and he's the guy at the counter, or you go up and you're the guy in the counter and you're standing off to the side and you're looking at like, what the hell, right? So your friend turns around, walks towards you, and you're like, dude, that girl was flirting with you. And he instantly, right, floods in his mind like, oh my God, you're right, right? Like, and it's just like he gets super nervous and everything else. But, we hear stories all the time about people who have known each other for years and they work together and they didn't realize that both of them liked one another. And then they end up married a month after they discover that, but they knew each other 10 years before that, right? And so believing is seeing. And so that's the way your perception works. So if you want to create something new in your life, the first thing you have to do is foster belief that is possible. And you have to clear the underlying beliefs that are keeping you from seeing it right now. Because we live in a world of infinite possibilities, right? In any given second, there's an infinite number of things going on. Our mind compresses it down to the most interesting things. And so the reason it doesn't see it is to believe it's possible. Your mind doesn't waste its power looking for things that it doesn't believe is possible. So therefore you don't see them. And so if you want to change your life, what you have to do is you have to start shaping and changing your internal world so that you can not see new opportunities. You can see the opportunities that are already available to you.
Right about that, but the whole definitely believe it when you actually see it.
Right. Yeah, and that's the basis for our book, is that when you shape and change what you feel about yourself and the world on the inside, everything on the outside starts shaping and changing. And so essentially that's how it works. But you have to be able to know what's going on in your subconscious mind, right? And so there is a key to figuring out what's going on in your subconscious mind, which is your emotions. Your emotions are indicators to what's going on in the inside, in your subconscious mind. They're your window into the subconscious mind. And the example I'd use for this is, why do the things that upset you? For viewers' sake, they haven't seen the movie. I had a really abusive situation in kindergarten where my teacher called me stupid every day and really abused me. And so the idea is as I moved out of that, you could call me ugly, I wouldn't care, right? But if you called me stupid, it was on. Well, the question is, why did that upset me? You didn't even have to say the word stupid. You could just insinuate it, like, oh, you wouldn't understand. Oh, you saying I'm stupid? Right? Well, we're constantly making our emotions about other people and their emotions about us, when your emotions were never really meant to be an indicator there was something wrong on the outside. They were meant to be an indicator there's something wrong on the inside. And so the reason that I would get upset when I perceived that somebody was referring to me as stupid is because I would literally, because I was still harboring those feelings around being stupid because of my experience in the past. And so, we do this combination of emotions and perception When you harness the power of your emotions to understand what you currently believe about the world, to shape and change your perception, everything changes and you create whatever you want.
Hey there, you superstar. Thanks a bunch for making it this far in the podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it. Heck, if you made it this far, that means you really enjoyed it. Be sure to shoot the guest an email or head over to the social media pages and leave them a nice response that you heard them on the Going North podcast, so that way they can continue to be inspired to do great things. And be sure to share this podcast with others that you think would enjoy it as well, because we want to inspire as many people as possible to live their dreams, embrace them, and to do something positive.